Good afternoon, everybody. Glad that you could make it out on this. Well, at least it's a rainy day here. My name's Jim Norris. I'm currently the publisher of Entertainment Spotlight and the president of Entertainment Marketer. Some people may not know it, but many years ago, I was also a drummer for several years. So this is definitely of interest to myself. So why are we doing this? Few reasons. Obviously, drummers don't get a chance to get together too often because they're kind of the one lonely person. Um, and Jeff's book came along, lots of good things to learn. What we're going to do just for a second here. Okay. So this is a little poll here. You can just indicate where you live. It's like a lot from Ontario, from Eastern Canada, which of course is the Maritimes, one of my favorite places in the world. Okay, so the second thing we want to know about you is just, and this is multiple choice, because most musicians tend to do more than one thing just to be able to stay alive. So obviously, lots of drummers, be a supplier or two, educators, industry professional. Show you that. Okay, there's a chat function. So you can see it at the bottom of your screen, so you can talk to other people. More important than that, there's a Q&A function. So if you have questions as we go through this, you can just put them in there. We'll do all the Q&A at the end, and I'm sure I'll have lots of questions for Jeff, and you will as well, and we'll make sure they get taken care of. There will be a recording of this, and it'll be available afterwards. You'll get an email by tomorrow that'll indicate where the recording is. So if you want to go back to it for reference or pass it on to any of your fellow drummers, you can do so. One important factor here is what I call follow-up. And all of us, and especially because you're here, all of us are interested in doing what we do better. The danger in that, you go to clinics, you might, read a magazine, read a book, watch a podcast, whatever it is. But the tendency is that within a few days, you're just back where you started. So the important thing here is by tomorrow morning, you should write out a to-do list of 5 things that you're going to do differently. Okay. And one of those things should be to buy Jeff's book, of course, maybe practice more, but that's important to do that digitally or write it on a post-it note or whatever, so that anytime you learn anything, it changes your life, because that's important. So we've done that. So Jeff, you can go to his website, which I'll include in the follow-up notes. Um, Very accomplished drummer, played with some of the top musicians in North America. A teacher, runs his own academy, and now we can add to that long list his his new book, that's the Rudimental Blueprint, which we'll be talking about shortly. Just a couple of questions just before we get started. If you could go back a few years and just to when you started playing the drums, how did that happen? What got you involved, and how did you start?
That's a great question. So many moons ago, my cousin was a drummer. He's still a drummer. And he was a little bit older than me. And being as influential as he was, I wanted to be like my cousin Chris. So in grade 6, we had the opportunity to choose an instrument. And my parents probably very reluctantly said, yeah, sure, I guess you could play drums. So, and then I was a drummer in grade 6, and I fell in love with it. I fell in love with every aspect of it, and I started taking lessons right away. And I never really stopped. Like I still take lessons whenever I can. There's always something to learn, but yeah, I've been doing this for most of my life.
That's great. And you've managed to do that and still stay in the beautiful city of Ottawa?
Yeah, well, Ottawa was fantastic. So I when I was studying, trying to figure out what university I was going to go to, I was going to go to U of T, and I actually got a scholarship to go to U of T. But I thought about where do I want to live? Do I want to live, in Ottawa, close to my parents and my family? Kind of like, you know, be in a little bit more of a contained market where I'd be able to make a little bit more of a name for myself, and that's what I decided to do. But I love Ottawa. I used to tour with JW Jones all over the place, and Toronto was very, very close to different things. Right? So I found it very convenient. I do love the city. I've always loved being here, and I've been very fortunate to travel all over the world. And apart from Switzerland, which I absolutely adored, I think Canada was one of the nicest places to be in. So
For sure. Switzerland is great. I love it. So the first drum kit you had, what kind was it?
yeah, for sure. So I was renting a Ludwig Rocker 2 from a company in Carlsbad Springs called Musicare. So I did that for a while, and then my parents brought me to Steve's Music Store, and I bought my first drum set, which was a Pearl drum set. And then from there, I started to play Yamaha. And then when I was touring a lot, I got really, really lucky. I met a gentleman by the name of Scott Atkins, who works for Artist Liaison for Coast Music. And then I was signed as a Sonar endorser. And that's going to be, oh my goodness, probably longer than I care to say. I probably about 20 years now.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Scott's one of the attendees today, which is great.
Oh, hey, Scott.
He gets around, that's for sure. So what are you currently using now for gear? Drums, cymbals, and the rest of it?
So I pretty much I always use Sonar. So right now, my favorite Sonar kit is actually the Ascent kit, and I have a couple of them. I just find their beach drums, they're absolutely fantastic. I actually did purchase another vintage Sonar kit, which I have to go pick up Dave's Drum Shop. But that's a 1960s beach drum set. But I really love the Ascents. I have a Delight as well that I use for recording, but I just find the Ascents, they sound great in any context, right? So being a professional drummer in Ottawa, I got really lucky playing blues and jazz and rock and pop and you name it. So, but I found that this drum set was very universal. I didn't have to kind of pick and choose. Oh, I have a country gig. What drum set am I going to use today? What sizes am I going to use today? I found the Ascent. It's got a beautiful tone. And now, like I still love bringing my delights around and play them all the time. But if I go to a recording studio, I always give the engineer an option. I'm like, "Well, I have peaches and like I have maples, right? So what do you think?" And most of the time, I actually just bring the beach kit.
Excellent. What kind of cymbals do you use?
Zildjian, yeah, Zildjian. So right now, I'm in love with the Kuropi line. Any other Kuropi fans in here today? That's my favorite line. So I've been playing them. Oh my gosh, for probably about 15 years now, 10, 15 years. Whenever they were introduced, I started buying them, and I haven't looked back. They're phenomenal. Yeah, especially I've the 14s, but the 15-inch hi-hats are very, very, very special.
And how long ago did you start your drum academy?
Probably well, actually, I've started teaching when I was about in my early 20s, and I started teaching for a company called Hummingbird Music, which is just in Nepean where I live. And I decided to kind of venture off on my own. I was in university at Carleton University studying music. And then I just decided opening up my own drum academy, and I've been doing that for a long time. And I still work for Carleton University, so I'm the one of the drum set professors at Carleton, with another fantastic drummer by the name of Jamie Holmes in Ottawa. And then I'm a professor at Algonquin College, but I don't teach necessarily music at Algonquin. It's more media and communications and whatnot. So
So you're a busy guy.
I sometimes, yes, yeah, depending on the week. And to make it even more complicated, I'm currently doing my master's in education, which is
Wow.
part of the reason why I wanted to do this book, and really adopt a different type of perspective, which I can talk about later. But that thrown into the mix, I've been working on essays all morning, so I'm really happy to do this right now.
And how do you balance all of that and still have a personal slash family life?
I write everything down. I write everything down. I have 2 different planners that I do. One of my favorite books is a book by Stephen Covey called 7 Habits of Highly Successful People. And
Right.
one chapter is completely dedicated to managing your time. And I read that book probably about 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago, and it completely changed my life. The way I organize things to do day by day, and the way I organize things to do, a week, 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance.
That's great. So
Mhm.
just talking about rudiments for a sec. I was a drummer in the olden days, many years ago, and I used to take lessons. And the book that I used at that time was called Stick Control, which is pretty well known book. When we had our book distribution business, it was one of our top selling titles. And one of the things that the teacher taught me was to use the different rudiments in there, but play them on the set with the feet and hands instead of just with the sticks. And I thought that was very cool.
Oh yeah.
I assume you've used that book somewhere in your life,
I have, yeah, that and another one, which I'm sure you've obviously run into, is Ted Reed's Syncopation.
right?
Both of those books, the George Lawrence Stone, the Stick Control and Syncopation, you can use that in multitude of ways. So I think syncopation, correct me if I'm wrong, was published in the 50s, and I think stick control might be from the late 30s, right? So these books are, getting up to almost 100 years old, 75, 80 years old, but they're still quite used with contemporary modern drum set education. In fact, in my studio, I pretty much rely on Syncopation by Ted Reed to start students understanding note values, counting, particularly counting. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. I think that's really important. But that's great about those books is the simplicity of the book, that the authors probably didn't intend the way that it was being used today, which I think is just a beautiful thing. In fact, there's a book by John Ramsey um, going through the various ways that you can go through syncopation. So there's a book that's out talking about the book Syncopation by Ted Reed, talking about the multitude of different perspectives that you can take and going through that book multiple ways, which I think is just fantastic.
Excellent. So working on rudiment is can be hard work,
Oh yeah.
and some drummers I'm sure would say, well, what do I need to do that for? I'm playing okay. So in your mind, what's the importance of any drummer spending time on rudiments?
Well, I'm glad that you asked. So I actually have a slideshow. So if you don't mind, do you mind if I share the slideshow?
Sure, no problem.
Okay, because it does go over everything. I'm such a college professor having a slideshow, but that's okay. So, um, looking at like why rudiments are important, the biggest thing that I find is that it improves coordination and muscle memory. And I didn't unfortunately grow up within the drum corps community. I was first introduced through rudiments and through drum corps style drumming, actually through Chuck Burrows, who was the original author of this book, who we're going to talk about in a little bit. But it really improves the coordination and the muscle memory. Learning how to go around the kit with fluidity and dexterity with different types of hand techniques you want to utilize. And then learning the 4 different types of strokes, which are really essential to understanding the language of drumming. And that's like the full stroke, the downstroke, the tap strokes, and the upstrokes. And then looking at how understanding rudiments can deepen your understanding of phrasing and subdivisions on the drum set, right? And particularly when you're playing paradiddles, for instance. If I'm playing a paradiddle and I can understand the different groupings of paradiddles, groupings of 4, right? So I'm looking at like the over 16th notes, 1E and 2E and 3E and 4E. And I can actually take that and put it over triplets. 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, right? And I'm by changing the subdivision, I'm really understanding different types of phrasings that I can utilize these different rudiments in. And then also it just expands your vocabulary, right? So singles and doubles, well, singles, because doubles is more of a little bit more of a hard rudiment. But if you're just looking at understanding drumming just from the strokes of single strokes, your vocabulary is very limited. So when you learn doubles, when you learn flams and flam taps and random and double paradiddles and drags and everything like that, you're basically just increasing the knowledge that you have that you can apply to the drum set. And that's the most important thing about what we do. We want to have a conversation with people, and those rudiments allow us to have that.
Excellent. I had an interview with Gil Moore the other day, and we are talking about his early days. And he happened to go see Skip Prokop when he was playing with the Poppers many years ago. And of course, Skip went on to play with Lighthouse. And he was just saying how much that affected him. And I saw the Poppers several times years ago, and Skip used all his drum corps training. And some of the things he did with double stroke rolls doing triplets were just, when I saw him do that, it was like, my God, what is that? It
Oh
was amazing.
yeah, oh yeah. The most proficient drummers in the world are drum set or rudimental guys, the guys that study rudiments, right? So, looking at like Steve Gadd, for instance, or even Buddy Rich, or Jason Sutter, Travis Barker, all these people cite rudimental training as the foundation of their playing.
Excellent. Kind of snare drum is that, by the way?
This is a Sonar compressor snare drum.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's a fantastic snare drum.
You're gonna be doing some clinics in different areas so people can, experience you live. I know you've done some things in Ottawa. Are you gonna be going out on the road with your show?
Not right now. Just trying to get the book out there. I'm trying to actually get it into right now. It's available in about 7 different Long and McQuades across Ontario. So that perhaps might be an opportunity for me to go around to the different cities to do some solos and workshops at the different Long and McQuades. But right now, it's just focusing on releasing the book and working with yourself and whatnot.
That's great. And they can also get the book at, Amazon print and at, you have a digital version as well?
I do, yes. So the book is being distributed digitally through Hudson Music. So in the slideshow at the end, I have the links if anybody wants to write them down, and I can share those.
Okay, well, when I post this on YouTube, which I will be doing in the next couple of days, I'll put those links in as well. Anybody wants to go into the Q&A at the bottom and put their questions in, then I can read those out and we can work at those. One thing I just wanted to mention to Jeff, it's almost a truism that people make fun of the drummer. And I'm sure you've experienced that. And if any of you, and I'm sure most of you have seen Spinal Tap, and then the Spinal Tap 2 is out now, which I haven't seen yet, but in that one they definitely certainly make fun of the drummer. And yet in many bands, the drummer is the leader and the business person. That's what are your comments on that?
I think we all do enjoy a good drummer joke. And my brother is a professional musician as well. He plays saxophone. I play in a lot of bands with him, and he never lets me forget all the drummer jokes that he hears all the time. Um, I think we can take it, as a group of people. I think we have such a strong community that we don't mind being the butt end of a joke. And I find drummers have a very good sense of humor. So for me, I actually quite enjoy it. I think that we are a very respected part of the industry. Having some of the best drummers in the world lead their own bands, are incredibly successful and whatnot. I think it's a little bit of fun just about being in the music industry. One of my really really good friends plays trombone, and I like to tell him a couple good trombone jokes. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, there's so many musician jokes.
Oh yeah, there's
There-
books of them.
yeah, oh, there are.
It's
We used
amazing.
we used to have tons of them on our website at one time. It's just crazy. So, but it's interesting again going back to talking to Gil Moore. Um, obviously Triumph was very successful, and as a drummer, he had a successful life. But after that, he of course, or not even after that, but during that, he's got Metalworks Studios that he runs, and Metalworks Institute, which I taught marketing at for 6 years. and Metalworks Productions, and now he's involved in all kinds of charities. So he's kind of an idea that you better not make fun of the drummer, because he's just been very successful as a business person as well.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Actually, one of my good friends actually teaches at the institute, so he's going to be using the book, which is great.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So tell us more about the book. Hold up the cover again so people get
Sure. So the book
an idea
is
what
right
it was,
here.
and just kind of describe what the contents are.
Sure. So as I said, I'm doing my master's in education, and I love drum books. I love rudimental books. I've gone through. Chuck had two books out, and I went through a lot of the John Pratt books as well. Scott, who's on the call, I kept on bugging him for different publications for rudimental solos. But what happened was in 2019, um, I studied with Chuck all through university, and we became really, really good friends. And I always talked to him about pedagogy and about like my own teaching and really helping students. And unfortunately, in 2019, he passed away. And before his passing, I didn't know, but he had left me all the rights to all of his educational material. So I kind of thought, well, what do I want to do with this? I want to preserve his legacy, because he worked his whole life putting out these books. There's 12 books in total, and this is the first book that I've published so far. Um, so I wanted to preserve it. I wanted to make it a bit different, though, making it more accessible and more democratic in terms of maybe you don't need to have a drum set teacher to go through the book. You can just buy the book and use certain types of scaffolding or videos or resources to assist in your learning. So what I did is I met with Scott Atkins. He came over like the week before the pandemic hit, and we were chatting about the book, about different ways that I can promote it and put it out. And I just had the idea of what we call, what I've learned in my master's program, which is called a constructivist approach to education. And that basically, it sums up to being that being a musician, we all make meaning with other people, right? So I could be the best drummer in the world, but if I don't go out and play with anybody, what meaning does that have? Right. So as a musician, when people get together with bands, or you get together with your bass player friends or your drummer friends and you create music together, that interaction has meaning. And I wanted to create that meaning out of a book. So what I did is I spent about a year recording all of the snare drum solos in the book. There's about 100 snare drum solos in the book, and the solos are individual solos and duets. So there's 675 videos that I recorded. So what happens, and actually, maybe just go back to my slideshow. I can show you how I did it.
That'd be great. That's a lot of work recording
It's
all
a lot
of
of work. Yeah, it took me about a year to do,
it.
but I learned a lot. It was really beneficial for me to
You're
go.
kind of a fanatic, aren't you?
I really, really am. I really like working. I don't know. No. Right. So, the whole book has been redesigned a little bit because Chuck's original copy didn't have articulation. It was missing stickings and it didn't have any dynamics. So, with the help of Matt Savage is the author of Savage Rudimental Workshop, which was on Warner Publishing. We redesigned the book, kind of like a modern framework for kind of mastering different types of rudimental solos. And it really designed it for all levels. So whether you're a beginner or whether you're an intermediate or an advanced, you can really take something out of the book. So to go through, so again, all the videos are accessible through QR codes. So each solo has a QR code in the top right-hand corner, and that brings you to a playlist. And the playlist is all based on incremental approaches. So here's a version of a solo called Simp Part 2. So if you look in the right-hand corner, there's a QR code. If you hit that QR code, it'll bring you to a playlist. So that's a playlist that's being hosted on YouTube. And it starts with me playing the solo at 50 beats per minute, counting the solo out loud. And when you look at the video, you'll see the music's on the bottom, and there's a gray line that kind of shows you where I am within that bar. So it teaches you how to read music, it teaches you how to count, and it teaches you an approach to modeling where you can watch the video, read the music, and get better. So it promotes what is called critical reflection or critical feedback of your own playing. So if you're able to play it in sync modeling through the instructional videos, then you've learned how to play it at that tempo, and you can increase your tempo. So the first one's at 50, which is half the performance tempo. And I do increments all the way up to the actual performance tempo, which in this case is 100 beats per minute. And then there are duets as well. So what you could do is there's a sim part one. So if you wanted to practice the duet at home, you want to play sim part one, you scan the QR code for part two, and now you're playing with somebody. And you're playing with somebody at every tempo. So it increments from 50% with me counting it out loud, all the way to the performance tempo. And it's just a great way to scaffold the learning. So since the book came out, which is in September, I've been using the videos. So when I'm teaching, and I know there's a couple educators in the chat here too, in the clinic, what I do is I actually use the videos during the lesson, because it reinforces that idea that they should sit down and they should practice with the videos. If you're not practicing with the videos, you're not utilizing all the functionality of the book. That modeling, that scaffolding is a proven educational framework that was developed by a Russian psychologist. His name is Lev Vygotsky. And he had this whole idea of understanding a student's development through the zone of proximal development, right? So that zone of proximal development is challenging the student enough that they are challenged, but not enough that they hit cognitive overload and they're like, I don't understand. I don't know how to do this. This doesn't make any sense. So the videos do that in itself. So if you're doing it at 50 with the counting, it keeps you within that zone of proximal development as long as you understand how to read basic rhythms. And then each step challenges the user. Each incremental step challenges the user to push them all the way to the performance tempo. And that's the whole idea behind the book.
Excellent. So, just one question: the concept of the drummer as timekeeper.
Yes.
Could you just talk about that and the importance of your friend the metronome?
I do have a thing about the metronome. One big thing, is using a metronome. For those that know me, they know I'm obsessed with Star Wars, so I had to put Yoda in here somewhere. But practicing in front of a mirror and using a metronome, that metronome, it helps you in so many different ways. Helps you understand and hear the spaces between notes. It helps you understand subdivisions. It gives you that responsibility of setting that foundation, whether you're playing by yourself or whether you're playing with a band. Practicing with the metronome is incredibly important. But one thing I do enjoy about a metronome is it can help gauge how much you're improving. So if you are either increasing, if that's the goal, to increase your tempo to play at a certain point, and you can see that you're gradually getting better, you're gradually putting in the time and the increments of metronome are increasing, you're improving. Or the reverse, if you want to play jazz time at 40 beats per minute, which is really, really hard to do, you're starting at like 60 and then you go 50. And just that step, it's showing that you're improving. So you're doing something right. Right. So using the metronome can be a way to gauge your success in your practice sessions as well.
Excellent. And what about playing to a click track in the studio? How do you find that? I know the first time I ran into that, it was kind of annoying, but important.
It's really, really important, particularly now, because everything has to be snapped to a grid. I remember I was recording one album with Phil Bova, who's a great engineer in Ottawa. And he referred to it I'm going to release this band from the metronome jail. So we actually did the whole album without a metronome, and it ended up great. But that was the style, the sound. It was kind of like meant to bring the listener back to a previous era where using a metronome wasn't all that common within recording studios. But now with post production and whatnot, everything has to be snapped to a grid. And whether there are people that say that kills music, because music really isn't meant to be necessarily static, it's meant to move a little bit, right? But that's the difference between going to see a live band when they're not playing with the click track, or listening to an album, right? So that energy that's created, sometimes they'll play a song a little bit faster based on the reaction from the crowd or whatnot, how they're feeling, and sometimes maybe they'll play a little bit slower, right? So that energy is kind of being created when you're not playing with the click. But Now in the industry the way that it is now, like you definitely have to take the responsibility to learn, practice your songs with a click, particularly if you're going to the recording studio, because recording studios aren't cheap. Right, so when you go to a recording studio, you don't practice with the metronome, you don't practice with the click track, you're gonna have trouble. It can be debilitating when you're on somebody else's dime, somebody else is paying for their recording session, and you can't, play the song perfectly from the beginning to the end. So that again, you were talking about, Jim, about why practicing with a metronome is so important. Getting that foundation and learning how to play with something that's going to, um, you know, gauge or measure your performance. I think that's very, very important.
Excellent. Do you have any other tips for drummers in the studio getting great drum sounds and working with the engineer and such?
That's a great question. Really, really be prepared. That's the one thing. Whenever I get called for a session, is I practice till I don't want to hear the song anymore, because it allows me to you know make be very efficient in the recording studio. So and I try to work with the producer, also like the engineer, but also the person that wrote the song. Well, how do you vision this? How do you want the drums to go? So, for example, a couple of weeks ago, I was at a recording studio, Audio Valley, and I was recording this one track. And the gentleman involved, like he's writes really, really cool, quirky tunes, and I'm a quirky guy, and I really like it. But his vision of where the drums went was different than mine. And I was like, okay, well, I appreciate your insight, but what if we tried this? And he's like, no, 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 no. I really, really want it to be like this. And he's my boss.
Right.
He's the person that I have to make happy because I want him to hire me again. Right? So sometimes you have to kind of put aside your own ego and put aside your own abilities and listen to the people that have that vision that you may not share that vision with.
Excellent. I found in recording in Toronto, the different engineers that we worked with, their their restrictions on my playing was made me very tense in the studio.
Mhm.
In terms of what they did to the drums and the volume you could play at, because I like to play loud, and some of them liked that, and some of them didn't. But we recorded our second album in New York City, and this engineer had been around forever. And I asked him, what do you want me to do? He said, you play the drums and I'll do the recording. And that was it. He said, I don't really care if you play loud, quiet, or whatever it is. And that was very reassuring and relaxing to hear that from him.
Yeah, that's it. It's a lot of engineers, like they really go out of their way to make you feel comfortable. Because recording studios, it can be a little bit of a nerve-wracking experience. My favorite, engineers, and when I get in there, it's like I'm home. It's like, oh, it's so relaxing, and they talk about the tune, and if I made a mistake or whatever, they're like, oh, it's okay, we'll go back, we'll get it done the next time, we'll do another take or whatever. Like, they're just very accommodating to really make me feel that ease to allow me to perform at my best.
That's good. And as far as the drums that you use in the studio, do you use a particular set for studio as opposed to live?
No, not usually, because it's kind of like my sound. But I have an obsession with snare drums. So I will bring a couple of snare drums. So I have a really nice 14 inch bird's eye maple delight snare drum that's usually my go-to. But since I picked up the compressor, I'll use that one. I've got a bunch of the Ascent snare drums. I find that I tune my snare drums a little lower than most people, and I have different depths. I'll have a 6 and a 5 and whatnot. So bringing those options to recording studios, a lot of engineers really like that.
Excellent. And for a drummer that's in a band, I guess, and um, you know, rehearsing with the band occasionally and out playing live, how much time, and assuming they're serious, how much time a week should they be spending on rudiments and practicing on their kit by themselves with their friendly metronome?
Yeah, I think that depends on how efficient you are. So one thing, practicing in front of a mirror, right, really, really helps, right? So I like to introduce different strategies for practicing that allows students to um, not spend their entire life necessarily in their practice room, right? Like try to just be efficient, get what you need to get done. It's not necessarily how many hours you practice. If you practice 5 hours on Monday but nothing the rest of the week, is that better than doing a half an hour every single day? Right. So I am the firm believer that consistency is always better. So practicing that half an hour a day is way better than spending 5 hours in one session doing something, right? So at that point, you hit that cognitive overload where your brain's kind of like shutting off, and it doesn't. You're not really getting anything done. Uh, I saw Benny Greb do this in Ottawa one time, where he's like, when I'm practicing, I like to remove distractions. So if I'm only practicing on, let's say, technique, so singles and doubles and rudimental stuff, I'll just take my snare drum out and I'll just do that. And somebody was like, well, why do you do that? That doesn't seem as fun, right? He's like, well, because, and he kind of demonstrated, he's like, okay, well, if I'm sitting at my kit, which is full of wonderful sounds and textures and toys and all this kind of stuff, and I'm just practicing on one drum, I'll play and then maybe I'll make a mistake. And then in maybe frustration or boredom or something, I start kind of dabbling. And then before you know it, I'm doing like a little drum solo for like 15, 20 minutes. And you're like, no, 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 okay, 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 I got to stop doing that. I have to focus. I have to do what I need to do within this time period. And then it happens again. So in your allotted time that you have to practice, how efficient were you? Not really that efficient at all, right? So it's removing clutter from the practice space. It's making sure that consistency is really, really important. There's a great book by James Clear, which is called Atomic Habits, right? So the idea behind this book is that don't try to take over Rome in one day, basically. Just make small steps towards that goal, right? It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to happen over the weeks, months, and years that you practice. That idea of 10,000 hours makes you a master of something. But when you work that out, that's like 3 hours of practice for like a decade and a half, right? That's a long time to sit down and actually kind of focus on attaining those goals. Practice journals are great too. If you want to increase your efficiency when you're practicing, just write down, what did I practice? Or what did I have struggle with? What should I work on the next day? What was easy that I don't really necessarily have to revisit before my next lesson? And then creating goals. Creating goals is a really important part of trying to see your growth. So maybe your goal is, well, I want to play Free Falling by Tom Petty. I want to really, really fit into that groove. I want to lock in and I just want to play the whole song without making a mistake. Okay, well, that's a great goal. Maybe a long-term goal would be like, well, I really, really want to get my hands together. I want to be able to play like a clean double stroke roll within the next year, right? So having those goals in written down too, so you can see them, gives you the kind of the mindset that you want to hit those goals, right? And it also gives you the what's the word that I'm looking for? It's the responsibility of hitting that goal. And if you don't hit that goal, well, what do I need to do to change? What do I need to change to hit that goal maybe in the next time or in another period amount of time?
It's like achieving anything takes hard work,
Oh yeah.
and all the things that you're talking about, not only playing the drums, but anything in life. Um, Generally, the best way is the hardest way, unfortunately.
And there's no magic potion.
No,
Yeah,
no,
you have to put in the time.
for sure. So if somebody's been playing the drums for a while, they're taking lessons, they're in the basement and they're improving, and how do they um, get into a band or put together a band? Like, what should they do?
Networking is probably one of the most important parts of being a musician, and that's going to other people's shows. Going to jam sessions is a great idea to kind of meet like-minded individuals. If you love blues music, find out if there's a blues jam in your area and go to that. Meet people, give out your name and your number, and be open to try to like jam with different people, and people at all levels. You can learn something from everybody. I think that's an important thing to kind of important mindset to kind of go with as well. Social media, there's lots of different Facebook groups that post, if you're a drummer and you're looking to form a band, I'm really interested in pop and I want to play this style of music. How many other people would be interested in doing something with me? Social media is a great way to do it as well. Going to local colleges and universities, with budget cuts and whatnot, music programs have a hard time developing ensembles. With teachers getting laid off and whatnot, and space getting reallocated for other programs. So, going to universities and colleges to try to find other musicians, particularly if you're an advanced musician, to try to see who might be open to trying something, right? To either hosting a jam or trying to get a project off the ground.
Excellent. And what about simplicity? I guess that's one of my I find some drummers are just so junky, um, and it's there's no space left for anything. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I always come from the philosophy of less is more.
Right,
But I didn't always think that. As I matured in my wise years, I've definitely adopted that philosophy. When I was younger, I totally and I didn't have social media at that time, right? So I'm 47. So growing up, it was just kind of like looking at VHS stuff and DVD drum DVDs there was no YouTube. There was nothing like that, right? So there wasn't anything that exists in today's marketplace. Now, when you put on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, young drummers are bombarded with amazing chops, and I totally respect it. I think it's amazing. I can't play that fast. These guys like with double kick and like twirling their sticks and everything like that, and it's very, very impressive. But at one point, does it is it still music? Does it become more of like an Olympic sport? I think that loses a lot of musicality, in a sense that if you were doing all these different you know playing in groupings of five and whatnot in your pop gig, and really moving around the beat and superimposing different time signatures or whatever, I think that you would lose the gig, right? So I think meat and potatoes is the way to go. Like your backbeat has to be on 2 and 4, your bass drum on 1 and 3, and or on all the chord notes, and that's your basic groove. I think that is important, particularly when I'm teaching younger students who see these amazing Instagram videos of drummers just doing chops all over the place, right? And I do think that there's a time and a place for that, and I totally appreciate it. My algorithm pushes me towards those as well. But I think understanding that it's two separate things, right? There's a musical application, and there's maybe a creative or explorative function to it that you can definitely explore, but trying to keep the two separate.
for sure. One of my favorite drummers is Kenny Aronoff. We had him for a clinic years ago, and obviously Kenny's got amazing technique, but he seems to know when to use it. Most of the tracks that he does, it's perfect time and just very tasty and simple playing.
Oh yeah, my favorite tracks by him is uh, Mary Chapin Carpenter. He was a country singer, and
Right.
he was her drummer for a long time. And I had no idea that was Kenny Aronoff at the time. And then I actually saw a music video. I was like, oh my gosh, look at that. That's so cool. But it was so in the pocket, and it was so like tasteful and musical and whatnot. And as you know, he can play like there's no tomorrow. He's got chops to spare. We can all get a couple of his chops, but it's musicality always comes first.
For sure. I don't know if you've been keeping track of the new drummer for Rush at all, because that's been quite a big buzz. The fact that they're touring again, and that they have a new drummer who's from Germany, and a female. Have you kept an eye on that at all?
I think it's fantastic. Yeah. Anik Analysis is wonderful. I've been following her online for years, just her postings and whatnot. I think she's a great fit for that band. Um, there's music has come such a far way, from that kind of style of music. Like Rush is just it's wonderful, prog rock and used to be that style was a lot more commercial per se, like back in the 70s, right? But now we're kind of hit with very simplistic rock, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's wonderful. It's just what the market is deemed, popular right now. But I think bringing back that kind of prog rock into this, I think is wonderful. I think it's a fresh perspective, and I think Annika, her experience and her musicality, I think it's really going to come through in that style of music. I think it's going to be. I'm looking forward to it.
It's interesting as well. She's got a serious background as a uh, overall musician and as an educator as well. So a little bit different.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
So, any other points you want to make? We're just about out of time here. I'll definitely include where to get the book. When somebody does buy the book, wake up the next morning, what's the first thing they should do?
Read the introduction. You know what? I think we're always quick to just get into the exercises, but read the introduction. I do talk about Chuck. I talk about the approach to the book. I try. If anybody that knows me, I'm such a goof, so I try to add a little bit of humor into the book as well to make it a little bit more interesting to read. But I think there's a lot of good pieces of information that will help you go through the book. So don't just go to solo number one. Read the introduction.
Excellent. Well, this has been a great session. I wish I'd had you as a teacher 50 years ago when I was playing. And I wish, a book like this had existed. So thanks a lot, Jeff, and all the best in your future endeavors.
All right. Thanks a lot, Jim.